Hi, Fit and Well. I just finished teaching the hybrid section of this class and I thought I would film what we talked about so you guys have access to it too. Sorry I'm sweaty and I'm not wearing a mask because I'm in the room by myself. But we're gonna review some things that are important when you're starting your log. All right, so 2 things to know. We talked about the difference between anaerobic and aerobic exercise. Anaerobic is high intensity, short duration exercise, typically muscle building and strength training exercise. And aerobic is moderate intensity, longer endurance exercise, and it's typically working on your heart health and fat burning. So that's why it's really good to have both of those balanced. To be a fit and healthy person, you want to be good at both of those. So that's why for your logs, I expect for you to be doing 1 cardio workout and 1 strength focused workout. In your logs, you also need to keep track of your intensity and how hard you're working out. It's good to understand how hard you're pushing your body because you don't want to do really, really hard workouts all the time, and you don't want to do stuff that's not really challenging. You want to work out your body in a good way. So typically, adults who are healthy do about 150 minutes of moderate exercise and 75 minutes of vigorous exercise per week. So that's what you guys are shooting for in your logs. So how the heck do I know if I'm doing moderate exercise or vigorous exercise or light exercise? Well, in general, light exercise is something you would do in your daily living, like standing up right now, giving a lecture, or walking through the hallways, or getting in and out of your car. Moderate exercise is going to be something that is generally more aerobic, and I'm gonna give you some numbers of how to figure that out, but moderate exercise is kind of in the middle, and vigorous exercise is something that you can't do for a super long period of time. It's a challenging workout, and your heart rate is going to be high. The more complicated way of figuring this out is by understanding heart rate zones. So I do ask in your logs that you at least try to check your heart rate and keep up with that. It's a good skill to have, just not for this class, but for life in general, to understand what your heart rate means. So your heart rate is how many times your heart beats per minute. And a good way to think about it is you don't want your heart to have to work really, really hard your whole life to fuel you and to give you energy, because if you do that your whole life, your heart's gonna run out of energy at some point. So you wanna do all the things you can to make sure your heart is healthy and running properly. So by exercising and eating right and taking care of your body, you're gonna have a lower heart rate. In general, someone with a very good heart rate is 59 or lower. So let's talk about like a professional cyclist or a professional runner. Their heart rate is gonna probably be between like 45 and 55. That's really good. That's their heart rate when they're just resting and they're just doing like daily living activities. That's really, really good to have a heart rate like that. So if your heart rate when you're just resting, like when you're just sitting around, if it's above 90, that's usually an indicator that you might have some health issues going on if your heart rate's working that hard by just doing very little. So there's a great video on Moodle of how to check your heart rate and also re-explaining what I'm telling you right now. But in general, you want to use your middle finger and your index finger, and you're going to check it by doing your radial artery, the inside of your wrist, or your carotid artery, the inside of your neck. It kind of depends. Sometimes people can feel it better here or here. Or you can use a fancy schmancy watch or your cell phone. Sometimes they have the heart rate monitors on there. And if you ever have worked out at a gym, a lot of times you can hold the sensors and it's checking your heart rate through electrical currents. When you find your pulse, which usually takes a second, you're gonna either count how fast it's beating for 10 seconds and multiply that by 6, or count for 30 seconds and multiply by 2. The point of this is to see how many times your heart beats per minute. So now you understand the basic concept of heart rate. I'm going to give you some fun math numbers to play around with. It's good to do this on your own, just as a way of understanding where you should be working out. But follow along with me and we can do it together. All right, so first check your heart rate right now. Just practice taking it. So you're going to do, right now my heart rate, I just did it. I was 80 beats per minute, BPM, beats per minute. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to figure out your maximal heart rate. So maximum heart rate, there's typically, what's the word? Equation, there we go. An equation you can use to figure it out. It's 220 minus your age. This gives you a very approximate estimate of your maximum heart rate. Your maximum heart rate is supposed to be where you're at, like all out, like your body is almost like not able to keep doing it. So imagine finishing a really hard run and you're like bent over, about to throw up, cannot keep going. So that's max. So I'm gonna do 220 minus my age. I'm gonna let you guys keep you in the dark about that. So 220 minus your age is gonna be, my max heart rate should be around 189 beats per minute. Okay, so now I wanna figure out what should my vigorous heart rate be? When I'm working out in the vigorous zone and I'm checking my heart rate, what should I be at? So I'm gonna do 80% of my max. 80% of my max. So you're gonna take, for me, my maximum is 189 times 0.8, and that is 152 beats per minute. So when I'm working out in a vigorous zone, for example, right now, the class before, we did a high intensity interval training exercise. And at that point, when I was working out hard, my heart rate was about 150 beats per minute. All right, next, we're gonna do what your moderate heart rate should be. So I'm gonna take my max and multiply it by 60%, or 0.6. And for me, that's gonna be about 113. So when I'm doing a moderate exercise, so let's say I'm out for a long walk, I'm going hiking, maybe I'm going for a really easy jog, my heart rate is typically around 113 beats per minute. All right, and finally, we want to figure out what your light heart rate zone is. So we're going to do 40% of our max, so 0.4 times our max. And for me, that's about 76. So when I'm just standing around, or if I'm walking from one classroom to the next, or just starting my warm-up for a workout, I'm probably going to be around 70 to 90 beats per minute. So somewhere in the range of that. Lastly, how do you find your RHR, or your resting heart rate? You find that by taking your heart rate as soon as you wake up in the morning. So when your body's in this state that it's very relaxed, you haven't done much exertion for the day. When you take that in the morning, that's going to be your resting heart rate. So that's a good indication of how healthy you are. If that's low, that means that your heart isn't having to work that hard to keep everything moving and functioning. If you wake up and that's high, generally that, like I said, is an indicator that you need to get in shape. All right? If you have questions on this can be complicated, but please email me. One more quick thing, another way of doing all of this is RPE, which stands for rate of perceived exertion. Essentially, it's a scale that says how hard you're working out. So for the light zone, it might be 1 to 3, moderate zone, you're at a 4 to 6, and vigorous, you're at maybe a 7 to 8, and maximal is probably a 9 or 10. So if you're working out and you're trying to figure this out and you don't want to do heart rate, you can say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how am I feeling today? And that's just a simplified version of all of this.